What is up, you guys? Welcome to the Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
And I'm Gian.
And we're back on our regular shit.
Back on our bullshit.
Yeah, if you didn't like our Eurovision episode, it's not about you, it's about us.
Yeah, it's easy to watch Eurovision with our friends and day drink.
Yeah, some of us more than others.
Yeah, it's fine.
You looked so skinny afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, felt great. Never felt better. It actually prepared me for Pride Month, which of course probably by the time this is out, it's upon us.
We've also been working out, so like binge drinking and working out is really like setting it perfect for summer.
Setting a high standard, honestly, for topping that one for summer. But yeah, what are you doing for Pride, Sam? How are you celebrating Pride?
I'm not.
Oh, really? I was thinking of ordering, the MasterCard, the Pride MasterCard from Wells Fargo or whatever, and I might buy some rainbow Oreos.
Then I get some colorless Skittles.
Yeah, perfect.
Or I just ordered the new Apple Watch, but they have a new band that has like the new Pride flag that has like the black and brown stripes, because apparently they weren't included, but also it mixes in the trans flag. So
perfect. The amazing Technicolor Pride flag.
Yeah, there's definitely no like horrible color contrast in that.
No, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's pleasant on the eye. Everything about that's great.
Yeah.
And the thumping literalism of it is also a pleasure. Remember that an abstract symbol like a rainbow clearly just doesn't say some things loud enough. So it's really important you put literal thumping, skin colors into the flag just to make sure everybody understands that an abstract symbol of universalism actually also includes black and brown people. Yeah.
I think we need
and then it's just a big triangle of fucking pink and white and just because yet again a literal rainbow covering the entire visible spectrum of light, all that every color that can be perceived can be described.
Mm-hmm.
Already in there. But no, we got to do it again. It's important. You're a bad person if you don't want to put more fucking colors in the rainbow, Sam. Why don't you want to put more colors in the rainbow?
They should just do it white, so when the light shines across it, then it shoots a rainbow, because all color comes from white.
Did you happen to see that the Spanish post office released a series of stamps? Did you see this?
Yeah, I did. Well, you told me about it, I think.
Oh, yeah. So they... in an attempt to really just tap into the people's love of social justice and particularly racial justice, they released a series of skin tone stamps that were like white, and then a light brown, then a darker brown, then a black one, and the white one was the highest value. I shit you not, and they went down in value. And the black one was the lowest value stamp. It was like the 70 euro cent stamp or whatever.
That's a very European thing to do. I feel like they're trying to adapt like U.S. racial politics, but they don't fully understand it, and they're kind of tone deaf when it's like when like the New Zealanders or Australians like we're gonna obsess about Black Lives Matter when they have like no black people, and then like massacre like their indigenous populations, and it's like I don't think you're doing what you think you're doing.
Yeah, so America as a net exporter of sort of unhelpful ways to think about the world is doing its part.
I feel like for the stamps, you kind of get fucked over anyways.
Yeah, you can't do it either way.
If you make the black more expensive, I think it's also problematic if you think about the history. I mean,
there's a value of human life question there.
Yeah. At least I haven't seen a lot of like bodies and spaces discourse for this Pride, and that's kind of good, because I mean I feel like last year's was heavy on like queer bodies and trans bodies and asexual bodies, and it's like
yes, ostensibly living people referred to as bodies is creepy still.
Yeah.
So I've been studiously avoiding doing Pride discourse. As I promised, I said on Twitter, I'm like, I'm not doing it. It's May. It's the end of May. I'm not fucking doing it. And they keep trying to pull me back in. Yeah. It just gets worse and worse every fucking year.
Right. It's always the same conversation too. It's like, oh, kink at Pride, and police and corporations, and the solution's so simple and no one's talking about it.
Shame.
What if we just prohibit all the LGBTs from Pride and just leave it to the straights? That's already what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
So the two angles of discourse, right, are about like it's a redo of the same like Pride is not a gay zoo. It is my right to get fucked over a recycling bin if I want to in a jockstrap, and I don't care if don't bring your kids.
yeah.
Versus the people being like, no, it's very important for LGBT acceptance that we, everyone bring their children to watch us fucking over recycling bins, sort of like. And then unfortunately every year it just gets ratcheted up 1 degree further, which is a the children can be kinky discourse, which I'm like, ooh, fuck off.
That's
I
gross.
honestly, I do think American like pedophile hysteria is too much.
Yeah.
Like there's the idea that they're lurking everywhere. But honestly, if anybody's like looking at this discourse and going, gee, you know what nobody's really talking about is what if the kids are kinky and can fully understand adult sexuality on display, and not just understand it, but actually want to be included because they themselves are fully empowered sexual. I'm like, ooh, fuck off, you creepy fuck.
I hate this.
Okay, so for one, like I guess I'm the point being, I'm doing Pride discourse. I'm fucking doing it, but I'm doing it here on the pod where nobody can do stupid replies.
I love that.
So for one, sorry, to line in the sand, if you are attempting to conscript or project your parasexualities onto literal fucking children, stop. No, bad. You've lost the debate. No, so children are not kinky. Children are not even people.
You just failed.
I don't
them.
want anything to
If
do
your
with them.
children are kinky, you just failed them as parents. Like, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, children are not kinky because children aren't even people.
Yeah, that's gross. Like, just don't bring them. Like, I think there can be like things where like it's fine, but like, there's plenty of places where Pride's not where you bring them, and also Pride should just be canceled. It's so overpast its like use. It doesn't have any utility. They just keep dragging on. It's like, it's about Stonewall. It's like, no, it's not. It's about Absolute Vodka sponsoring your poppers as you have like a corporate flag run by like Lockheed Martin. Like,
Right.
it's so petty bouge, like nonsense that I have no utility as like a gay person who cares about like working class people getting power. Like, it's just like, it's all charade. It's a charade. It's for...
Charades.
It's a charade. It's some charades. It's some charades.
It's charades. Well, so I mean, yeah, I think if you're willing to think about exposing your children to the horrors of gay pride, of which there are many. I as a grown ass man, I'm not comfortable with everything that goes on at Pride. However, part of being a grown up is learning to kind of tolerate differences and learning to perhaps say, gee, that maybe this part isn't for me, and I can go somewhere else. But people won't do that, right? So you got to conscript children. They must sublimate their own individual desire to have a pride that is literally catering to them and their individual neuroses, tastes, sexual or otherwise. And it's the oldest trick in the book, right? Is when you're really saying, I feel uncomfortable at Pride because there's lots of people with bodies that I think are really hot that I don't have, and I'm neurotic about that. Or gee, I see some kinks in there that are like kind of traumatic and make me feel weird and squicky. I can't do that. So instead you have to say, you can't just say that. You have to say, somebody think of the children.
Yeah, it's so.
But what about the children?
Just be honest. Just say you don't like Pride. I'll say that. I don't like Pride. Like, I think Pride should be canceled.
Well, no, but they do like it. That's the problem. So I don't know if you saw our sort of curly haired friend who was TikToking with the like, we need to center we need to talk about how whiteness is centered at Pride and actually the black and brown bodies and spaces. Did you see this TikTok? Absolutely vile.
Yeah, I did, I think.
Yeah, just a vile, sanctimonious scold. One of many. This topic brings it out in people, but so like it was so there was such clear kind of projection onto the idea was that there's just a bunch of these hunky white muscle gays whose glistening rock hard bodies are just lively writhing in the sunshine, the sweat dripping merrily off them.
Yeah.
Oh, as they gyrate. Well, that's very bad. It's very bad because they don't want to fuck me. I mean, sorry, it's very bad because it's decentering lived experiences of other people who aren't me. And other people who I definitely don't think would want. It's like, just if you just want to fuck these people, just admit it and say, gee, it makes me feel really insecure to be around people who I personally think are very hot and unattainable.
Well, it's also like they want it both ways because a lot of these people, when they run
both ends. Yeah, they want it.
When they get in charge of like the LGBT orgs, like, and there were some UK ones where they demoted the position of like, say the ones for different positions and like of like identities and races and all of this shit. So they like cis white gay men no longer get a guaranteed fan table. And now they're like mad, like they're doing their own thing and they don't include us. It's like, you can't kick people out and complain about them doing their own thing, which isn't even what they're doing, and be like, oh, well, they're not including us. I'm like, you can't have it both ways. You got to do one or the other. And the solution is cancel pride.
Blackjack and hookers. This is the wider discourse that I think is very ugly. And I say this with some sincerity, though no actual personal sense of danger. Is that good old-fashioned homophobia of the kind that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people talk about homophobia as sort of like, it is very much a relic of a bygone era. It's not something you encounter quite so readily, even in the most backward parts of the US or whatever. It's just kind of unusual to see a lot of explicit homophobia. It is back. It's back in full force, and the only place it is filtered through racial politics.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically, the framing always goes something like, wow, I hate cis white gays.
Well, it's also gender discourse.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it's always I hate cis white gay men, because they are all like X.
Yeah,
it's like that in any context is actually quite an ugly thing to say. The reason people feel empowered to say it is A, they feel like the particular type of like cis white whatever muscle circuit queen gay or whatever is sexually unattainable to them. This is just obvious pathology. And then the other part being that it's a righteous cause.
Yeah.
Because these are regarded as powerful people. And so you can just literally do out and out homophobia. And it works the other way around. Did you see the other way? It was like people doing a kind of like was it like, I don't like Filipinos because they're homophobic, and they're all like,
oh yeah.
It's like, but this is insane.
That's so racist.
Well, it's this is the kind of the end state of marginalization discourse, is you say you pick one marginalized group and you can beat up on another one.
Yeah.
Because you can claim, well, this one's more marginalized than this, so this one is involved in the structural oppression of this other one. It's like, my God, it's designed to fucking. I think this is the real escape from the lab.
Well, I think the issue now is because Gen Z and like the PMC and Geo types are really what dominate. Like, in a lot of it right now, a lot of the old voices have been removed for being problematic. But like, you see celebrities and stuff who come out at the age of like 25. Like, I think it was a Disney star, like Dove Cameron. She came out as bisexual. I was like, I didn't think people would accept me in the community. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, you live in Hollywood. No one gives a shit. You're a girl. Like, it just like
female bisexuality in Hollywood.
You're sexual.
Never.
Like, these things are so unremarkable nowadays, and everyone's acting like it's like 10 years ago where like you'd still like be kicked out of the house, and like, sure, that happens, but like, these people aren't the ones that it's happening to. They're just like continuating this like nonsense, at least in like the US and like a lot of like Western Europe, of like this old timey, we hate the gays and we're gonna beat the shit out of them. It's like, that's not really the thing. Like, you're just doing it for attention now, and it's just kind of like annoying. Like, don't talk about it. Who cares where you're putting your vaginas and dicks and boobs and whatever. Like, no one cares. It's your private life. No one cares.
Right. And so I guess pride is such a flashpoint for discourse because it's the one place where the private is made public. and the private is made political. This was always the idea, right? Of, the underlying message is one of, coming out, being visible, driving acceptance through visibility, sometimes through confrontation, whatever it is. And like, honestly, it just sounds absurd now to say this. Like it was true once upon a time. It's not true anymore.
Well, it is political. It's just not political for any working people. It's political for the petty bouge PMC types and the capitalists who love this shit. As you see, they just continuously announce Pride like Christmas, like where it's like 12 months in advance.
We're playing the Pride music again.
Yeah.
Nothing but Lady Gaga in the foyer of your fucking local bank.
But like when you think about it, like what are the issues? The issues are all material. And wait, if you fixate them from like an LGBT stance, you're going to fail because it only is going to benefit the upper classes. Well, you need to unify with everyone. Like, turns out everyone needs healthcare. Everyone needs a house. So like if you unify with a broader group of people who have mutual concerns, even if they have different reasons why they struggle with getting net security, like that's going to be more beneficial. You don't need to make it about, I'm a trans person who needs housing, so we're going to only do trans people and our allies. And it's like, no, lots of people need housing. So you should branch out and just push for initiatives that help the entire population, the entire working class. Like it's just a distraction to further like break up the working class.
Yeah, I mean, well, and not just that. You think about what it means to be sort of just a flailing, puddle of ego, which is what pride sort of is, right? It would, at this point, right? Gay acceptance is so high and so kind of universal that the people at Pride are just going around just jerking each other off. They're like, look, I'm doing a gay acceptance. In the same way as somebody stopped you on the street and said, sir, I can't help you. I'm breathing air right now.
Yeah.
It's more unusual to kind of encounter homophobia of the kind that Pride was designed to counter. But instead, what it has opened the door for is just sort of neurotic Gen Z weirdos who can only understand the world through discourse, like through discursive means, right? They can only parse the world by kind of doing this like templatized critique.
Mm-hmm.
And the templatized critique has to say, well, look, there's good people and bad people involved in this, where this is anything that exists. I have chosen an affiliation that is entirely racial and aesthetic.
Yeah.
As in, it's like black and brown bodies and spaces, queer voices, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, once you've chosen that framing, you must look at the other side and say, well, gee, who has some power in this situation? Well, white, cis, gay men. So those are the bad ones. And lesbians, shut the fuck up. We're not talking about you ever.
Yeah, I feel that for lesbians.
Yeah, no, exactly. Lesbians have always felt this way at Pride. They just had the good grace to just like do more interesting shit like the Dyke March and like the dykes on bikes. That was the only interesting part of Pride. I think I saw somebody saying like we should just replace all of Pride with just dykes on bikes.
Yeah.
And it'd be great. That's like, honestly, I think that's a compromise we can all live with.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's my Pride discourse.
Yeah. It's canceled. Don't go. It's stupid.
It is stupid. You're stupid if you care. But the people who are trying to do Pride discourse on the basis of who's more marginalized than whom, these are fucking vampires and ghouls, and you should repudiate them to every fiber of your being. And if they're saying don't do kink at Pride, then go do kink at Pride. If they are saying don't bring your kids to Pride, bring everyone's children to Pride. Turn Pride into a fucking school outing. Just do whatever it is that is counter to whatever makes these people comfortable, because they are literally trying to redesign the world to not have to ever feel even momentarily uncomfortable. And I would like to make them very uncomfortable.
Also, the only good holiday for gays is Halloween. So, and you can't ruin that. Like, it's meant to just dress up and stuff. So
that's more like gay Rumspringa.
Yeah, that's. I mean, easily shifting into our next thing. I mean, I know the Palestine discourse has been going on again, and of course, capitalist entities and their politicians like the Squad and shit are really trying to hijack it so nothing changes again, just like Pride. You see people who are cheering on a ceasefire as well as all of like major world governments, which turns out a lot of people in the countries like of Palestine and like the broader Middle East were like, yeah, this doesn't work. It only helps Israel. Every time you've done a ceasefire, just gradually lose more land still. It's just kind of a way to pretend you're stopping violence when violence is like the only way people can actually resist an apartheid state. And we do see some countries actually taking a stance. The Maldives, which is those beautiful islands you see on Instagram.
World superpower.
Yeah, it's world superpower Maldives. Has cut all ties with Israel, and I think no longer recognizes it or something like that. Which, well, actually, like I think it's like 30 plus countries don't recognize Israel.
Yeah, but geography literacy is very low. People are very bad at recognizing places on maps in general.
Well, a lot of passports where they can't go to Israel and Israel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, is a little, I don't know.
I think they're correct.
No, it's fine. The issue is that like the people who are perhaps the decision makers are not inconvenienced by that at all because they didn't want to travel to any Muslim majority country. And they're really just jetting back and forth between New York and Israel anyway. So like, what the fuck do they care? Like, so I've just always been like, sort of thinking back to like the South African example where think about, you know, how many decades of quote unquote international pressure of this kind of like cutting ties with embassies, but then still doing trade deals or, you know, trying to like limit freedom of travel for certain, you know, people holding South African passports in certain places as a sign of your condemnation. It didn't fucking do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I'm sure it helped, but like, I don't know. It's not. It turns out you're just kind of inconveniencing a certain stratum of the population who probably didn't hold a lot of power anyway, and the people who are truly making the decisions, right? You know exactly where to, you know, which piece of Gaza City to which to launch the rockets are not really inconvenienced by this,
right? I mean,
not without a much stronger, you know, set of sanctions, effectively.
Well, this one cuts all trade and stuff with the country.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
but also like
nobody
the Maldives.
gives a shit. It's the Maldives. Who cares? No, no disrespect. Love the Maldives. Would love to visit. You know, it looks beautiful. But I'm just saying, nobody gives a shit.
Oh, you've had a listener there. How dare you?
I might be banned from the Maldives. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know because it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect my life.
I mean, we also had Ireland, who's always been a big Palestine. I don't like the term ally, whatever. We'll use ally because that's kind of what it is.
Booster.
It's a little bit of lib. But they're the first
Hype
EU
man.
country to declare Israel is doing annexation, which, like, no shit. The fact that I didn't realize that was a thing. But then they also voted against kicking out Israeli ambassador and doing complete boycott, divestment, and sanctions Israel. So it's very performative, like you said. I think people are excited to see some countries taking stances, but also, like you said, it kind of has no consequences because they're not sacrificing anything material. They're just kind of being like, well, we recognize this bad thing you're doing, and that's what we're stopping. Like, it's all it is. Like, the only people that can really fight it are like the resistance and like Palestine and like neighboring countries of like Lebanon and stuff.
The people, yeah. So the people of Israel have some agency over this.
Yeah.
And economic sanctions or whatever are sort of ineffective when you have the US just willing to do whatever. So the people of America have some power over this. I mean, we barely have any political power within our own country as it is, but
yeah,
at least hypothetically, right? We could hope to influence something about the US's orientation towards Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not super impressed with either of these hard-hitting, hard-hitting international boycotts or strong condemnations.
I think they have to be still careful because, like you said, the U.S. is so influential in all of these countries still, despite growing powers of like the BRICS countries and like Russia Russia's part of the BRICS, and China and stuff like that. So it's like they can't just be like full on like, fuck yeah. I mean, they're all capitalist states still. They're all gonna still ensure profit motives and that their class isn't gonna get fucked over by sanctions for like, preventing or harming Israelis' economy, like
right. Which I mean, you just think about how many international countries have significant assets or investment in Israel, and vice versa.
Diamonds,
tech, huge amounts of tech there. Intel has a giant Israeli presence, I believe. So do a lot of other like tech companies.
When I was applying to jobs after I left the libertarian think tank, one of them in my interview was like, oh yeah, we have an office in Tel Aviv, and I was like, yeah, this isn't gonna work.
I can go to Pride.
I didn't hear it back, but I was like, that's probably for the best.
So I guess on the other side of the coin of sanctions where they're powerful, hard hitting, and well placed.
Mm-hmm.
All those countries that withdrew embassies for Syria, huh? How about those guys?
Yeah, so Syria just ended their election cycle for president, but a bunch of like NATO and Western countries denied Syrians in there from voting legally in the presidential thing, while also complaining that these countries don't have democratic systems.
Right, and this is largely to do with embassy closures, right? That they had in 2012, when it was decided that Syria was the baddie,
mm-hmm.
and the moderate rebels was just an organic uprising of just concerned citizens doing just good things.
Yeah.
A lot of embassies got closed, like Canada closed the Syrian embassy, or basically cut diplomatic ties entirely. And so this means, Syrians abroad can't vote in their elections.
Yeah.
Which, whoops.
Which is also interesting because, like, for example, Germany doesn't or banned Syrians in the country from voting in the election. But a large percentage of Syrians in Germany aren't pro-Assad. So you would think you'd want them to vote if you don't want them. But they can't have that because what if they do well? Or if there's a big gap and then it shows he still won even though they voted, and then they can't argue like, oh, it was corrupt or it was whatever. Like,
right. It's about delegitimizing the result, or rather not legitimizing the results.
They do the same thing
not involving,
not sending observers for elections to see if they're fair.
Right.
Which we've seen for like Venezuela and
yes, it was the Carter Foundation just stopped sending observers to Venezuela after they kept finding the elections were free and fair.
Yeah.
Whoops. Yeah.
But Assad won with 95%.
In fairness, that is an odd number to win with. Who was he running against? Anybody good?
No. There's a few candidates, but like
95% is a suspiciously high margin for anything.
Yeah. I mean,
like I'm not. I guess I'm on board with people who think there might be some irregularities in these elections.
I mean, I think it's a natural product of most countries' elections. I mean, the people think like, oh, there's irregularities. That's inherently bad. Like, you can look in like a lot of.
No, I'm just saying winning an election by 95%. Keep in mind if you go take a poll and ask people what color the sky is, 95% of them won't agree it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't even get that kind of result in literally something of like how many fingers are on your hand. Like people would be like 14.
But also it's a war. It's at war, and I think because Syria's been able to reclaim so much that could just play a role. I mean,
Yeah.
if you saw pictures of the population, it's just massive amounts. There was a lot of journalists and groups there who kind of also were like, this seems pretty legit, because they just kept talking to people who were like, yeah, like that's why
I believe he has a lot of popular support.
I mean, was it 95%? We don't know. Like,
well, that's what I did. Just, you know.
But
Saddam Hussein used to do the same thing, which like
he was the only candidate.
Yeah.
And it was just a yes or no. Do you think he should be president or not?
Right. And he would get like 102%.
No, it was 99. His highest was 99%.
So I don't know. I don't, you know, I'm not even trying to dodge the charge of being a Assadist, which, you know, I'll happily say, I believe he's better than the alternative, but I guess I'm not lining up to be like, gee, a free and fair election yielding 95% for the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
Just not likely. Pretty much impossible. Just like in terms of like the number of people who could fill out a ballot correctly, like you're just going to get more than 5% of people who just like fuck up their ballot, accidentally vote for Pat Robertson or whatever.
See, I think guilty Paul trap like caring and like I don't care. I mean, I think the Syrian people, if that's really concern for them, I think they can figure it out themselves, like any other country.
No,
like,
I absolutely agree.
So like it's, I mean,
yeah, I'm not suggesting we need to do anything about it. Merely,
no, I know.
Merely anytime I see the number 95% reported an election, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, where's the votes for White O? Like, surely he should have won this election.
He is popular. Everyone I've talked
White O?
to.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Not White O.
He's very popular in Syria. He's actually the legitimate president of Syria.
Yeah. He won't even run.
But anyway, so he won, and certainly anybody who was concerned trolling about legitimacy of Syrian democracy certainly should maybe start looking at like, yeah, how does like diaspora and like immigrants, how do they vote, and is your country through a moralist stance of performative bullshit based on the belief that, you know, the flawed reports of the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government, that they withdrew all diplomatic ties that would allow people to, say, vote in their elections or even access a lot of like, consular services, seems a bit bullshit.
But also, I think a lot of people underestimate popularity for people abroad. Like, most people I've talked to, like, their ideal is not probably the Ba'athist and Assad, but right now they tend to have a critical support because they see him as the one option preventing like an ISIL like Wahhabi state, where like there was pictures of like the Syria celebrations, and it looked, you know, like how Syria was depicted, like mixed people, like of Christians and Muslims, and people were not wearing burqas and stuff. And then you see the free territories by the separatists, or the, what do they call it, the moderate rebels.
Yep.
And you see everyone just like full on like Salafi, like you don't even see women in the audience. Like, it's kind of insane.
Sounds like Pride.
Yeah. No lesbians there.
No.
But it kind of goes along with like another one, Belarus. I mean, questionable elections.
No, legit, free and fair.
Yeah. But there was an international scandal this week because they just don't want to give up. And Belarus arrested a regime change activist via requiring a plane that flew over their air to land.
Yes, so this is Gray Zone. We're reporting nicely on Roman Protasevich. I think it's Protasevich. I don't know how you say his name. Roman. Anyway, was traveling on a Ryanair flight. Plane crossed into Belarusian airspace, and then was ordered to land. Then they took him off the plane, arrested him. And everyone got all, no, you can't just enforce territorial sovereignty in airspace.
Yeah.
This is what everyone was like turning to procedural weenies It was the cries of open borders now applying to the skies as well. They're like, no, you can't just do that. I think it's Ben Norton in Grey Zone also points out, which the U.S. happily did to Evo Morales' plane when they thought Snowden was on it. Remember, they forced it to land, even though it was not, transiting anywhere in the U.S. And the other part about airspace in general is the idea of like airspace as sovereign territory of the nation over which it exists is old, well established. It's a convention that is applied with pretty much universally. I'd say like even the rogue states still kind of act in this way, and it's common for planes to be routed around places, for example, based on some of these things where they don't have a flyover agreement or like an open skies agreement. So the idea that people are surprised that person wanted by the Belarusian state is on a plane that will be flying over Belarusian airspace is then arrested in Belarus. Like, yeah, that's it. In Belarus.
It was also funny, did a picture of him as this like democratic, like free, like liberal kind of person. Like they with like all of these leaders, and then it turned out he was joined Azov battalion in Ukraine, which was like the fascist forces, like
the Ukrainian neo-Nazis with literal swastikas on them,
who were literally like bombing the shit out of Donbass, which was the separatist region. And it's like, this guy's not like a freedom fighter, he's like a Nazi.
Well, they were calling him a journalist. This is a dissident journalist, and it turned out his journalism involved appearing in Nazi regalia or neo-Nazi regalia on the like the Azov battalion's like propaganda magazine. That's his journalism. This guy's not a journalist. He's so literally a yeah, nice. Yeah, he's a vice writer and / Azov battalion fighter, and he was there for years with them. It's not like he was just like this wasn't like he was just an embedded journalist or something. Like the dude was like fighting with them for years. I believe by his own admission, he doesn't dispute this fact.
Right.
And then he's like, now of course they're like, oh my god, look, a Belarusian neo-Nazi, this is our guy, this is our color revolution dude. Like in the same way of old Navalny, like is like the same kind of just like shithead, absolutely far right ghoul that suddenly just becomes the darling of the Western media and must actually just be a brave free thinker suppressed by an evil regime, as opposed to like, maybe he's just not a good person.
Right.
Maybe he's not very good. Maybe the fact that the CIA loves these people might mean that they have some bad politics.
Also, like, they need to choose some like better looking voices. I mean, he looks like a Vice journalist, and who's going to care about that? Like,
yeah, I definitely don't care if Vice journalists just get dragged off every plane they ever get on and imprisoned. I'm fine with this.
Yeah,
honestly, fine.
It's like Pussy Riot. It's like, well, like, what do you think was going to happen? Like, you like masturbated with like a cross and like the
in a church.
Yeah,
just speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, no, just the liberal hand wringing, or just it's not even hand wringing. Liberal wish thinking is that like every shithead disliked by a state that that the US is basically agitating against must be just a freedom loving hero, as opposed to could be an incredibly compromised individual with a bunch of like, people run afoul of states for reasons good and bad, I guess I would say. And I would point to somebody like Julian Assange as somebody who has run afoul of states for bad reasons, as in he is wrongly persecuted by many Western powers. That doesn't mean that every single person who comes under the scrutiny of a government, good or bad, is actually just a brave truth teller.
Yeah, he did like terror to like this region of of Ukraine. Well, not no longer Ukraine. Like, I don't know. He's not an innocent person. He's a Nazi. Like, and not even as like in his mind, it's like he actually was doing the like massacres of people. And I think there was potential like collaboration with Russia as Ukraine really escalates their efforts against Crimea and the Donbass. So I mean, Belarus owns its skies, and I don't know, we would do the same thing to like other extreme right-wing people doing violence around the world. Like, at least I'd hope so. Like, no one would be like, oh, if it was like an ISIS person being arrested, no one would be like, oh, he's a freedom fighter. It's like, no, he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi, but like based on religion.
But also the just the number of these like National Endowment for Democracy and like Radio Free Europe ghouls that keep coming out of the woodwork to push this narrative of this is a principled journalist. They're all Havel fellows. It's named after Václav Havel.
Yeah,
which is a U.S. government-backed scholarship given to like color revolutionaries, basically. And yeah, they're all just lining up to just be all like, we support journalists. You know, actually, if journalists having to flee the country, this is wrong. But I don't know. That response is more predictable than honestly like fucking American libs suddenly starting to think free speech is valuable again, briefly.
Right.
And then becoming just deeply concerned by just these ugly, evil walls built in the sky. You know, it's just these are Trumpian tactics. Just have a wall in the sky surrounding a country that if a plane crosses into it, you will be detained by air ice, and kept in air detention air camps.
Well, Belarus is kind of like a Syria where like we have to paint them as like the most evil country and government in the world. They're literally Hitler, which I think they've been compared to, which we do over and over and over again. And it's like when you see the coverage of the country, they don't show you the other side of the thing. You don't see the massive protests in support of like the government and the elections, which doesn't mean they're like good or whatever. Like, it just means you got to show the full picture, and they're not doing that. They're not showing that this is just gonna fuck up these countries worse than they are. Like,
who's the I'm trying to remember. So there's the last sort of aspirational color revolutionary against Lukashenko was her name was Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya or something.
Yeah,
is that how you say it? I don't know if that's how you say it. But did you see that there was the prank that some like Russian pranksters called the NED, like the head of the National Endowment for Democracy, pretending to be her?
Yeah.
And the people for the NED are all just like bragging about how much meddling they've been doing to try and overthrow Lukashenko.
And Putin.
Yeah, well, that too. But just hilarious how like blatant it was.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we've done a lot of big moves there. Like, it's like, yeah, no shit.
It's also like funny because like I think whenever we say it when it's happening, people lose their shit, and then it's like we're not proved wrong. Like, it's just all on the internet. Like, you can literally just look up
the
funding.
Watch the video.
I mean, recently the EU, who was crying about like against freedom and rule of law, even though Belarus is using rule of law to take down a plane in their airspace. It's like, we will offer you $3 billion once you become a democracy, which just means once you become a puppet state of like the EU and the US.
So that was Ursula von der Leyen, who's the literal president of the European Commission, just tweeting a public statement in front of a bunch of like EU flags, saying, yeah, we have a $3 billion euro economic investment package ready to go for Belarus when it becomes democratic.
Whatever the fuck that means. Like, because we know like their definitions of democracy are meaningless when you see
their definition of democracy is hewing to German economic central planning for the rest of Europe, while imposing sort of free markets on the people of Europe. Amazing. Like, that sounds great. Yeah, wonderful.
Well, these places also have large public sectors and investment in things like education and healthcare. I mean, Belarus has a very high like bed count for the population, which was one of the contributing reasons for why they didn't have as worse of an outcome with COVID. And also they didn't have a nursing home culture, which is probably good. But these countries are just kind of painted as like ghouls and monsters when it's like we're friends with the ghouls and monsters. We're friends with like Israel and like Saudi Arabia and all these other horrible states.
Lukashenko. It's really convenient that he just has those painted on villain eyebrows from like, cartoon villains and an evil goatee. It's really convenient that he's just cartoonishly evil.
He also has some very funny quotes about like lesbians and gay people, which like aren't woke or
Pride.
I'd agree with, but it's like
happy pride from Alexander Lukashenko.
Yeah. I mean, Assad's better because he's a more beautiful, intelligent wife.
Yeah, you're a big Asad fan. Yeah,
she's smart and gorgeous, and she's like was a media darling until America decided to hate Syria. So,
oh God, fuck! I just looked what's next, and my blood is already boiling.
Yeah,
we're doing one more discourse. This is a discourse episode.
Yeah,
we're doing motherfucking police. We're doing cops.
Hell yeah, bitches. So as everyone knows, we had this past summer big abolish the police and defund the police as Wells Fargo sponsored Black Lives Matter organization took America by storm, and COVID never had any impact. And turns out cities aren't really going on with it anymore after their cuts, which also happened to go with massive budget cuts due to economic restrictions due to COVID. Now they're adding money back.
It's back, baby.
Yeah.
Was it de Blasio is just doing like the precinct he promised, the police precinct he promised not to build. He's just building it now. And yeah, a lot of cities are just like, screw it. Like we're back. I mean, in fairness, like crime is just on the rise massively in a lot of American cities right now.
Welcome to the Chaz.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Just maybe. I mean, and this is just a hypothesis. Is that the kinds of people that like pay, property taxes to cities and therefore holds undue sway with them, don't want to live in an autonomous zone.
Yeah.
with community policing to shoot black teenagers. They prefer a professional force of police to shoot black teenagers. Just a hypothesis, as I say, but it's at least interesting to sort of think that like just the discourse has turned a corner here, in that everyone who was like, we're winning, look, we're getting all these concessions, the mayor of some city will stand up and say like, we promise to assemble a budget subcommittee to review police funding for, financial year 2022 quarter one. And they were like, yes, we've won. This is what the power of the people can do. It's like, well, no, this was austerity by stealth that happened to come with a very convenient prepackaged narrative where they could justify basically cutting hundreds of millions of dollars out of, these bloated budgets. With mass popular support, essentially, or, a very vocal support on the streets of doing this. And now that they don't need that political support anymore, they're like, well, fuck it. Back to business.
Yes, the economies are opening, they can fund more of it. Because, the capitalist parties and class who run the country weren't going to just, let there be no presence of security to ensure property rights and stuff like that for them. Anyone believing that was kind of delusional, I think. And how to say, police as a systemic force are good in the current political class society we live in. But it's the reality is it wasn't going to go away. And all it did was help encourage austerity measures. It was quite clear it only happened because people or the cities had to cut budgets, and this was a good reason. But also, like, you know, people burnt down public housing projects and stuff like that. And
so I'm just reading this. So the Wall Street Journal actually reporting about this, you know, just unbiased, clear reporting naturally. But it does tell the story of Oakland, California, cutting $14 million from the police budget last summer. This was under direct pressure, essentially, from protests. And they used those funds to fund a new program which mental health specialists respond to mental health crisis calls instead of police. You know, maybe that's reasonable. And to shift some functions like crossing guards to other departments. So just yet again, we're just moving money around within the same apparatus. And then in December, facing a budget crunch, I wonder what could have happened in 2020 that would mean a city like Oakland was facing a budget crunch. Mayor Libby Schaaf, who Sam once put on the spot in a Q&A fundraiser thing, asked the department to cut another $15 million. So that's just doing budget cuts. That's not political pressure. That's just, we don't have enough money. Could you please cut your budgets? Then Police Chief Laron Armstrong said the department chose to cut walking patrols, a team that worked to prevent retaliatory gang shootings, and a detail that policed sideshows, informal gatherings on city streets where car aficionados share off their stunt driving skills. Sideshows, very Bay Area thing. By mid-April, there had been 41 homicides, up from 13 over the same period last year. So it's an almost 4 times increase. And sideshows proliferated, with one happened near Miss Schaaf's home. That's Libby Schaaf, Mayor Libby Schaaf. There were also attacks on Asian Americans in Oakland's Chinatown, where walking officers had previously patrolled. And then, what's missing in the defunding conversation is our city is facing a huge increase in violent crime, the chief said. Gee, what a surprise! Who could have seen this coming?
Right.
Mass austerity, off the, you know, as a you could call it recuperation or co-opting of a populist movement which was about handing sort of unchecked power of reform to cynical politicians. I'm shocked that has led to actual bad outcomes for the people who live in cities.
Also
shocked.
Aligned with a massive global, like, what's it, like, basically crunch for the working class and massive transfer of wealth to the top.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, more people are leaving, like, the working class phase and having to just do whatever it takes to survive because of mass unemployment, especially in, like, the Bay Area and a lot of cities where it was much more strict, while also, like, having no restrictions, which police do still just do some things that, like, are necessary. Like, if you, like, have a violent attack, you're not just going to go to, like, a social worker to, like, report it. That's the reality.
You can use an app.
Just because they're there to protect the capitalist class doesn't mean they, like, have no function for the mass of society. Turns out anarchist chaos doesn't work even under capitalism.
Well, so here's where I'm just going to continue quoting from this article only because, like, well, whatever. John Jones III, a community leader from East Oakland, where most homicides occur, said people in his neighborhood don't want fewer officers, just better ones. He quotes, they want the police to, number one, stop killing and harming us, and two, they want them to do their job. When bullets are flying through your home, when your house is being broken into, you want somebody to show up and respond. I'm just reminded of all the people who, every time anybody makes a claim, I think friend of the pod, Eric Arbour, has made the claim that, like, people don't want to live in a Chaz type setup and that they do not want to live in unpoliced communities under capitalism, and that this is, you know, not you know, that basically normal ass people with normal ass aspirations do not much care for gunfights happening, you know, on their street with and being you know, collateral damage. And everyone's always like, who thinks that? That's no working person says that ever. Well, here's your guy. He's a community leader from East Oakland. I just think it's funny that people think that's an absurd position to take. And I find it's always like just histrionic women on Twitter who live in like the most lily white gated communities or something being all like, oh, well, actually policing, like the POC bodies and spaces don't want more policing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
Well, also when you look into polls, I mean, for white and black people, because that's usually what they focus on, because it's also race related, but via the media and NGO sectors and stuff. But both groups, majority, don't want to defund or abolish the police, but they do overwhelmingly support things like reform, like more education and like
accountability structures, prosecute, crimes committed by police. Which, all to be clear, I'm on board with all that. That sounds great.
And we forget that like most of the world is capitalist, and they don't have the same police violence that we do.
We have a very bad police force in general.
Yeah.
To be clear, but that's the problem, is that there's a sort of there's a hyperbolous quality to the idea of like that you can skip steps there from these police are very bad police, therefore we should have no police.
Mm-hmm.
Ignoring the fact that police serve a function under capitalism. And you and I together would both disagree that function should be necessary. The idea of, protecting private property under capitalism and disciplining surplus labor, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, no, I don't want that function to exist, but it does.
Yep.
And therefore, like an actual concrete demand is, well, if we're going to have fucking police, and that's the mechanism by which we kind of enforce certain limits of physical safety and certain abilities to simply like function in the world and in communities, well, then you are damned well within your rights to demand that they be the best fucking police.
Right.
In the same way as if you want to go to a hospital, you want it to be the best damned hospital. And if somebody's putting out a fire and you're burning a building, you want the best damn police firemen, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's fine. Demand more, but instead people are demanding less.
And also
demanding nothing and getting it in spades.
I think this past year is going to actually result in more police violence, because all the older guys who are near retirement are just instantly retiring. People are like just leaving en masse, often from certain departments like that are quite necessary, like critical emergency crews have complete teams like retire or leave. And it's like, so you're just going to replace a bunch of newbies and no one to like check those.
Right. Trigger happy newbies who've been on the job for, they've had 4 weeks of training in a classroom, and now they've got access to military style weaponry, and they're out on the streets in an unfamiliar community. Yeah, that'll go fucking great.
Yeah, it's going to go really
Love that
great.
for us.
I mean, it also is hilarious because groups like the Squad, who've been really big on like the defund and like BLM kind of stuff, turns out they helped let a capital police funding bill that spent way more pass because AOC, Jamal Bowman, and Rashida Tlaib voted present and basically let the vote pass by one vote, because they don't care if the rest of like America's cities and stuff turn to like Brazilian favelas, as long as their city protects them. So police are good when it protects them. But for everybody else, well, we're going to defund them. And we're going to have social workers. We're going to have no change in class relations or social benefits or anything, which turns out social funding and stuff actually plays a bigger role in resolving a lot of this conflict. And no one's actually advocated for. They say it, but all of them is cut stuff. They've never spent anything.
Well, yeah, and that particular $1.9 billion capital security bill, the voting present on it was so disingenuous. I mean, it was carefully coordinated that they would vote present. If any one of them had just voted against it, it would have failed. And it's honestly this like, it's for like new security annexes and screening points, and for like hardened like landscaping positions for fucking snipers around the Capitol and shit. It is entirely a reaction to sort of January 6th, whatever, and AOC will not stop crying about this and talking about her trauma and how it's like being in a war. and then she's going to performatively vote present, not vote against it, right? This is, a vote present there was a vote for, by the logic of, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're voting for Trump. I mean, same logic, right? To vote present in this was a vote for this, knowing very well what the numbers were and that it would pass.
Yeah.
Literally any one of them voting against it would have defeated it, so they didn't want to defeat it. They wanted it to pass.
Yeah, they just let the ones who it was more critical for their next campaigns, people like Cory Bush, who literally ran on Black Lives Matter, which more appeals to, in reality, the petty bouge of African-American people. It's not the working class as we pretend these candidates represent. I mean, Ilhan Omar was also really big, so of course she voted for, but people like AOC and Jamal Brown and Rashida Tlaib, that wasn't as big in their campaigns. Like,
well, they're important to the process of sheepdogging, radicals into the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And so they are allowed to have this symbolic objection where, oh yes, no, my hands are clean. Sure, I just effectively ensured that a nearly $2 billion police bill, basically, and not just police bill, it's policing that other people of a quality and a caliber that other people can't get in their communities. Keep in mind, the entire police budget of New York City is, I think, $5.2 billion after getting cut by about $1 billion by de Blasio after the protests. So New York City was at 10-ish million people, give or take.
Yeah.
It's $5.2 billion. The Capitol building has just had an increase of $2 billion worth of basically police and security funding.
Right.
This is, oh, and one of the carve-outs is that the Capitol Hill police, I guess, and, security forces with that mandate can do individual security details for quote-unquote high-risk politicians. So, because previously it was only like the highest ranking members got this, but now I guess the idea is that AOC gets a security detail out of this. That's
hilarious.
Yeah. So AOC gets to vote present, then she gets personal policing while she then goes and, contributes to basically the idea of like an ad hoc approach to defunding police departments across America. Just what a snake.
I mean, this is what
absolute fucking snake.
This is what happens when you let a legitimate concern of like, police brutality to working and like lumpen people, like people who are the most marginalized in society, be hijacked by NGO sectors and progressive social dem candidates and corporations. I mean, people still want to pretend that Black Lives Matter leadership as an organization, not so much as a movement, because I think there's a lot of sections in there where like maybe there is some more like materialist base, and I'm not talking about them. So I'm talking.
No, there's plenty of sincere people who want good things.
When I say BLM, I mean the organization. They're literally not in the same class representation. I mean, they work with things like Wells Fargo, and they buy like, I think one of them just bought like a really like expensive house.
Almost $2 million house, yeah.
Yeah, she's really scared in her like private security neighborhood. Like, oh my, like that's not your friend. It's, and also the recent demands. Did you see that where it was like all
vote
like
for Joe Biden, vote for Joe Biden,
and all
vote
like,
for Joe Biden.
All like Capitol,
was that not their demands?
It kind of was, and it was all like Capitol Hill like shit and like vote.
Oh, it's like no fly lists for terrorists, so like for domestic terrorists and shit, like more security state nonsense.
Yeah, it's just a Democratic Party like extension.
Right.
It's not for working people. Like it's done nothing to like solve actual crime in working class, like Black or white or Latino communities at all, or Asian communities. Like,
right. Yes. Well. What a happy thought. Well, I think we've done enough discourse for one night. We did the discourse episode.
Yeah. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, everyone. See you at Pride. Bring your children and your kink gear.
Yeah. Bye.